We also have a backup camera that's gonna go in here. I think now would be a good time to work on that. That way we can run the backup camera wire with all our wiring. And we were not over cutting zip ties and adding more zip ties. Make sense, Fernando?
Wow, smart.
I know, every now and then. For that, we're gonna be using the factory Pioneer backup camera. It's just gonna mount up underneath there. To do that, there is this little black piece right here. We're gonna remove that and mount the camera to that. So the camera will sit basically right there in the middle, right about here. He really likes his Florida State tag, so he wants to keep it. So to get this little guy off here, all we need to do is take our pry tool, grab it here from the front, snap it down. There's 3 clips that hold it on, one either side and one here. We're gonna go ahead and drill a hole in this for our cable to run up through. Then we'll have to drill a hole through this so we can run our cable into the car. So in the bottom of the camera is this body side molding tape here. What we wanna do is make sure we clean this guy off thoroughly. For that, we're gonna use an alcohol pad. We're gonna go ahead and clean both sides. That way when we're touching it, we don't accidentally pick something up on one side and transfer it to the other. I'll also go ahead and clean off my fingertips, because they're probably gonna have a little bit of grease on them too, and I don't want to get any of that. We'll go ahead and wait for that to dry. I always like to do a test fit to just kind of get an idea of where it's gonna go. We want to make sure we move it far enough forward so that there's a place for us to run this wire through, and also so that it can actually see outside of the back of the car. Now, next thing I'm gonna do is gonna go ahead and score a straight line where I want this to go. And then I will put a blue piece of tape on it so that I can see the line even better. Now that I know that, I can find the center. Now all I have to do is peel the tape off and stick it in place. You want to make sure you get the camera as straight as possible. Any deviation, just a slight bit, taken out 10 or 15 feet is going to be huge. So make sure you double check it, triple check it, and then once you have it where you want it, go ahead and push it in place. Make sure that tape is pushed all the way down. Now what I want to do is go ahead and put a screw in the back here to hold this all in place. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and remove the camera itself. What I've done is I've taken my rotozip and I've put a little C-groove in here. That way the camera wire has somewhere to go. I was going to drill a hole through it, but then I thought that if we ever have to service it, it's just going to make it more difficult. So now we'll go ahead and screw it back in place. Just in case you were wondering, there's a little circle here. This is up, so when we put it back in, we want to make sure that is on top. Now we'll just go ahead and get this kind of like not overly tight, just kind of like so it still moves a little bit, because we have to still line it up, and once the screen gets into the dash we can play with it a little bit more. Now one of the things about these cameras is these are like super long for whatever reason. Don't run this into the car and hide this somewhere in a panel. Keep this in the back by the camera. I don't know why they do this, because if this ever were to go bad, I don't want to pull half the car apart just to get to this connection. That's kind of silly, when really all I need to do is replace the camera. Now we can go ahead and fish this through. Now we're going to go ahead and put some insulation on this wire for where it's going to be out here and exposed, so that nothing is going to interfere with it, kind of like they did here from the factory. And then we'll go ahead and drill a hole. I believe I want to drill a hole somewhere right in here. This area down here is a single piece of metal. If I go up into this area, it's a double piece of metal. I want to try to stay away from that. So I went ahead and drilled the hole, put a grommet in place. So now I'm going to go ahead and fish the wire through that hole, and we can go ahead and put some strip caulk in there so that it doesn't rust or corrode or anything like that, and no water will get into the car. We've also insulated the ends that are going to be exposed to anything, and how we did that is we wrapped it with exterior Tesa tape first, and then we went ahead and put our sleeving over it, keep it nice and protected. Probably better than the factory. Now it's just going to snap back up there in place, and we'll use our strip caulk to go ahead and cover the hole. So you can see, along with the grommet, the strip caulk does a great job of insulating it. It filled in any remaining gaps that would be there, along with covered the whole exterior. The inside still looks the same with the grommet. You can also put more strip caulk here if you want to be super cautious. Now what we want to do is go ahead and attach this wire with this run that we've done here, and then we'll make our connection right up in here in this area here, so that all we have to do is remove this one panel to get to the camera if anything should happen to it. So we have the epicenter and the amplifiers all in. Wires are ran all towards the front. Everything is zip tied up and ready. Let's move to the front of the car now, and we're gonna join Fernando at the head unit. Before we do that, let me show you what I mean by zip tied up and ready. So our wire is zip tied up along here, comes down following the main power wire in around and then down in here. We went ahead and used some of our silicone filled shrink wrap over the wire here just like they did, so we're matching there. On this side there again, the wire is all zip tied up and across, goes through where the factory bundle is here, and so everything is out of the way and good to go. Now we already went ahead and pulled the radio out of the dash. Normally we would show you that. That part of this installation hasn't changed. We have a great video up that shows you how to just install the radio if you want to know more in depth. But let's hop in and we'll talk about what we do now. It's a little bit different than when we shot that video. Now one of the things on the kit instructions is in the dash. It shows you parts you need to remove, and they just show you removing this little tiny spot, which is silly because there's a ton of room in this dash if you can get to it, and you need to get to it. So let me show you what we do. So as you can see, like way back there, watch this. I'm gonna put my hand and I can get this way, look, I got half my arm up in that dash. There's tons of room. I mean, look, I'm putting my whole hand in there. You need that room because you have this giant pack module that needs to go somewhere. Now they show you just removing this little area right here. Don't do that. Remove this whole area across here and then all the way back. Leave these two screws. They need to screw in, and make sure you have a nice bridge that still attaches them. But as far as everything else, this needs to go. Now this wire here is gonna chill out, and if you leave what they're telling you, you gotta feed this thing in there, and it's like, it just goes in very poorly. So let's take a look at the updated Camaro kit from pack. What makes this kit different from the previous is the knobs now come installed on it. So this is cool for many reasons. The first one is if you have a car that has another manufacturer's kit in it and you don't have your factory radio anymore, you weren't able to install this kit because you didn't have the knobs. Well, now it comes with those, you can. They actually make this kit with and without the knobs, and also you can buy just the knobs by themselves. Other than that, the kit remains the same as far as all the other accessories that it has. There are two little buttons you have to put here for the seat heaters. We'll get to in a little bit. Now for those of you that have never seen what comes in the kit, we'll go ahead and unbox it and pull all this stuff out. So in the box we get the instructions, we get the main wiring harness, air conditioning wire harness, we get a USB extension, the brain box, the antenna adapter, the chime module, this is the thing that's gonna ding, powering harness that's gonna connect to your aftermarket radio, and if it had a backup camera, the factory backup camera retention cable, a left and right side bracket, the auxiliary adapter, a pocket, some spacers, a bag of screws, and then the control knob covers for either the heated seats or the non-heated seats. Now the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get these brackets attached to our radio so that we can test fit the housing. Now the factory radio, you are going to need to remove these three clips along the top and install them onto the new kit. Other than that, you're done with this. Now the first thing we want to do is go ahead and break off these little ears here. These are for if you're using the pocket. If not, go ahead and remove them and then sand them flat. Now what I like to do is actually use the pocket onto the mounting brackets to kind of see how far this forward lip needs to be away from here, so I can get a good idea how far this lip needs to be away. So looking at this, I have a little more than 1/8 of an inch. So that means that gap between here and here needs to be a little more than 1/8 of an inch. Now we're going to take it over to the car and test fit it. Don't put those clips on until the last thing, because we just want to be able to test fit it, make sure this goes on, and make sure that the radio is centered up and whatnot, and then we have a good top and bottom. We don't need those clips on there yet. Alright, so seeing how far the kit is supposed to go in and where we're at, I think I need to go back like a 1/16 of an inch more on the radio. Alright, Alright, so we have a good depth right there. This is flush like it was when it wasn't out. We're gonna leave that like that for right now. The only test we're gonna do is at the very end, before we snap this in and put those white clips on, is we'll do a open and close test to make sure that there's plenty of room for that to open and close. I think there will be. There's enough of a gap here for that to happen. I'm actually gonna leave this in here for right now just because I have no place else to put it, and this will keep it from getting scratched. Let's head back over to the bench. We'll work on the wiring harness. Now, just like any puzzle, when you have too many pieces to look at, it can get to be a bit foreboding. So what we want to do is move some of this off of here so we can concentrate on individual sections. The first thing we want to do is go ahead and grab the USB and the aux cable here, and we could set those aside. These are going to get plugged into the back of the center console and ran forward up behind the radio. With that, we can also remove the Pioneer secondary USB cable because we don't need those on here for any of this. We can also take off the GPS antenna. That'll get installed in the car, and the Bluetooth microphone. We're not going to need that for right now either. So that leaves us with these pieces right here. I like to start with the main harness that's going to plug into my car and work out from there. I also don't like any of the tape that they put on these things, so I go ahead and remove them as well. Now, another feature that this kit has added from the previous is this length of power and ground here. And what that's designed to do is loop around and through the main brain on the unit. So on previous versions, you had the power and ground here that would run directly through the unit and feed this. What they're doing now is it's still going in here to feed this, but you're looping it around to feed here as well. The reason why they're doing that is because they wanted to increase the bus size for power and ground, and instead of having to build a whole new brain box to increase that bus, they're just looping the unit around. It's a simple solution. So I'm going to go ahead first and do is get these all dressed up so that they'll look factory, and with that we're going to use our exterior Tessa tape. The reason why we use exterior instead of the more fleecy style interior is that this will handle more heat and it won't get gooey as fast. Now I like to start between 1.5 inches and 2 inches from my main plug and work my way in. And as you're wrapping it, pull and wrap, pull and wrap. You want it on there as tight as possible. Now the other thing we want to do to this is remove this guy here. This is a secondary aux input for the radio. We're not going to be using that. We're just going to pull it out because we're using the other aux cable. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and plug in our harness to our main brain box. It's labeled all across the top as far as where these plugs have to go. Starting here next to the pack logo, it says amplified factory audio. So if this had the premium sound system, we could plug in here. This one doesn't. It has the standard factory audio. That means that there's no amplifier inside of it. If we were just putting in a basic radio, we would go ahead and plug into that. And then the 18 watts by 4 or 50 watts by 4 from the deck would then go out to all the speakers. And then we'll come over here where it says vehicle connection, and you'll notice there's a piece of tape. We're gonna go ahead and remove that tape, and why we're removing that is because we're gonna also come over here and there's a dial on the back. The reason why that tape is there is because it's telling you to set the steering wheel controls. We're gonna turn it to 7, and what that has to do with is inside the instruction manual, if you turn to the steering wheel section on page 4, right across here, it tells you the number you're gonna want for the radio you're using. In this case, we're using Pioneer, which is 7. Now we can go ahead and plug in our harness. Now let's go back to the speaker harness for a minute. As I said, if we were using deck power, we'd plug it in like this. We're not though. We're going to be using an amplifier. And we don't want to run the power from our amplifier through this. It's really not designed to handle the power from the amplifier. So what we want to do is go ahead and unplug that. Now we're going to go ahead and cut this connector off, because we're going to need to connect our amplifier wires up to here to go off to the speakers in the car. We won't be using either one of these. We'll go ahead and throw this in the box so that if he ever decides to pull the amplifiers out and just use the radio to power it, it'll be in the box, along with all his factory radio parts. Now we'll go ahead and set this aside for a moment. Let's grab the secondary harness here. Inside of that, you'll find this guy right here, which is the steering wheel control harness. It has 2 wires connected to it, a black wire that looks like a headphone jack right here, and a blue-yellow wire. The blue-yellow wire is for the Kenwood or JVC. The black wire is for everyone else that uses an 1/8 inch style steering wheel control interface. Since we're not using either one of those, we'll go ahead and cut it short and cap it off so that it won't get interfered with. It has a cap on it. Go ahead and remove the cap, and now we can come back over and plug this into the brain. This is going to get plugged in next to that rotary knob. Let's take a look at the AC harness right here. Now on this you have this pink and orange with a black stripe wire. These are if you're using the MyTouch system. If your car doesn't have that MyTouch touchscreen in the dash, dash, you can go ahead and cut them short, or if you want, you can remove the tape that they've put on it and remove them from the actual connection point that they've put in here. Now this harness is designed to plug into the back of the kit. We left the kit in the car, so I'm going to hop into the car real quick, plug this in so we don't lose it. Now we'll take a look at the main wiring harness. It's going to go to the aftermarket radio. Go ahead and pull off all the tape. There's a couple warnings that are attached to it, like this one says connect the remote wire from aftermarket radio for audio output. So like there's a remote turn on here, so if this had the Boston Acoustic stereo in it, you'd need to hook that up in order to turn it on. Even though we've cut them all off, make sure you read them before you cut them off. Now the chime module is going to plug in here to this. On the side of the chime module is a volume control, so if it is too loud, you can turn it down here. Now we'll go ahead and pull out some of the wires that are not going to be used right off the bat. The speaker wires, we're not going to be using those because, like I said, we're going to be wiring directly at the harness on this side, so those are not necessary. So for that, we're just going to go ahead and tape those off. We don't need to cap them off because they're actually not getting connected to anything, so there will be no power going through them whatsoever on either side. Now if you want, you can remove them all together. However, I'm going to leave them because he might need them. Now that's going to leave us a couple more colors here. This guy here is a relay. The reason why there's a relay on here is that this is only designed to put out like 1 amp of current. Well, we need more than that if we ever want to do a backup camera or a processor or anything like that. So this ups that output for us, so we don't have to worry about adding a relay. Next we have a blue white, which is the amplifier turn on. Make sure you hook this up even if it's not needed. You have a brown loop. This is going to be mute for OnStar, which is going to connect to the Pioneer's yellow black wire here. There's a blue wire for an amplified antenna. Now this guy here also has an amplified antenna turn on, which is located here, so just make sure you connect those all together. We have an orange white, which is illumination. That's so that when you turn on the dash lights, the radio will dim. So you have a light green emergency brake wire output. You have a purple white reverse trigger, so this will send 12 volts every time you put your car in reverse, and that'll allow the screen to switch over if you have a backup camera in. Next is the pink wire. This is the VSS, or Vehicle Speed Sense. This is going to be for use with the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's also a GPS antenna. This radio doesn't have built-in GPS. The idea behind this combination is that if you're going to have your phone in your pocket, it can use the GPS antenna built into the radio and also the speed pulse coming off of the car to better help guide you down the road more precisely. Now the Pioneer that we're putting in has all the same colors except for that brown and that yellow black that we mentioned. So at this point, all we have to do is marry up all our colors together. The one other thing we have is that this does have the speaker wires on it. This side we are going to cap off these speaker wires because these are going to be live. We want to make sure that they don't touch anything in the dash. Now we also have to add on a power, ground, and remote for the epicenter that we ran in the trunk of the car, so we'll go ahead and wire those in. We'll have little pigtails that you can plug into. Then we also have to tie in an accessory and ground pigtail for the backup camera that we're installing.